Imagine an empire that lasts for over 600 years, one that stretches across 3 continents. It's a story packed with incredible leaders, legendary warriors, and unbelievable twists and turns. So how did it all happen? Today we're diving into the epic story of the Ottoman Empire's rise, its near-total collapse, and its incredible rebirth. It really all comes down to this one massive question. How on earth does a small, pretty much unknown tribe with no money and no giant army somehow build one of the most powerful and long-lasting empires in all of human history? The answer isn't what you'd expect. It's not about power or money, at least not at the beginning. The story of the Ottomans starts in a world that was completely shattered, completely chaotic. And it all began with a single leader's dream, one that was powerful enough to build an empire right from the ashes. Okay, so let's set the stage here. To really get how this dream even started, we have to understand the broken world that it grew out of. So picture this. It's the 13th century in Anatolia, what we now call Turkey. And it is a total mess, a complete power vacuum. The Seljuk Empire, which had been this major power, was gone. It had collapsed. The Byzantine Empire, the successor to ancient Rome, was basically a ghost of its former self, just crumbling. And to top it all off, Mongol invasions from the east were just destroying everything in their path. There was no order, no real leadership, just fear. But right in the middle of all that chaos, one man decides to do something, a tribal leader named Osman. Now, this guy didn't have any grand titles, he wasn't rich, but he had a vision. He wanted to build a place where his people could finally be safe and proud and strong. So in 1299, he declared his little state independent. And just like that, the Ottoman story began. Of course, a dream is one thing, but building an empire that actually lasts, well, that takes strategy. It takes structure. So the next generation, they took that dream and they started forging it into a real, actual state. After Osman, his son Orhan took the reins. And Orhan wasn't just another warrior. He was a brilliant builder. Capturing the city of Bursa, that was a total game changer. It gave the Ottomans their very first capital city, and it transformed them from, a wandering tribe into a settled kingdom with a real center of power. And this is where you really start to see their genius for building a state. Orhan created a professional army and a tax system that was actually fair. But he also did something incredible for the time. He guaranteed freedom of religion for Christians and Jews living under his rule. You combine that with investments in law and education, and suddenly the Ottoman state isn't just powerful. It's a stable, attractive place that people want to be a part of. Then, under a later sultan, Murad I, came one of their most famous and most feared innovations, the Janissaries. This was an elite corps of soldiers, taken as young boys from Christian families and raised to be loyal to one person and one person only, the Sultan. Their discipline was legendary, and they became the absolute heart of the Ottoman military machine for centuries. So at this point, the empire's rise seems totally unstoppable, right? But as you know, every great story has its low point. And for the Ottomans, this wasn't just a crisis, it was almost the end of everything. Meet Sultan Bayezid I. His nickname was the Lightning, and for good reason. His armies moved so fast, expanding the empire quicker than anyone before him. He was crushing European armies. He was even laying siege to Constantinople itself. To the entire world, this guy looked invincible. But, the faster you rise, the harder you can fall. Just as Bayezid was at the absolute peak of his power, another legendary conqueror was on the move out in the east, a warlord named Timur, sometimes known as Tamerlane, and his army was enormous, brutal, and had already torn through Persia, Baghdad, and parts of India. And this was never going to be just a war for land. No, this was a clash of two colossal egos. On one side, you have Bayezid, who's calling himself the Sultan of Rome, and on the other, you have Timur, who's claiming to be the heir of Genghis Khan himself. After they sent a bunch of insulting letters back and forth, you just knew a showdown between the two most powerful men on the planet was about to happen. The result was the Battle of Ankara in 1402, and it was a complete catastrophe for the Ottomans. An absolute disaster. Timur's brilliant tactics actually turned some of Bayezid's own troops against him. The outcome? Total devastation. The invincible Sultan was captured, his army was wiped out, and the empire completely fell apart, collapsing into a brutal 10-year civil war between his sons. The Ottoman dream was dead, or so it seemed. Because from those absolute ashes of defeat comes maybe the most incredible chapter of this entire story, a rebirth that would lead to the conquest of a dream that everyone thought was impossible. After a decade of brothers fighting brothers for the scraps of a broken empire, one son finally came out on top, Mehmed I. And he wasn't a great conqueror like his father was. No, he was something much more important for that moment. He was a healer. He patiently took down his rivals, he stopped foreign invasions, and he carefully stitched the shattered empire back together, piece by piece. He literally saved it from being erased from history. And that act of saving the empire is what made everything else possible. It paved the way for his grandson, Mehmed II, who became sultan at just 19 years old. And this kid, he was completely and utterly obsessed with one single thing: conquering Constantinople, the legendary city that had fought off sieges for 1,000 years. So to do the impossible, he put together a colossal army. We are talking more than 80,000 soldiers, sailors, and engineers. It was a force on a scale that people had rarely seen, and they were all focused on one single target. And what were they up against? Well, fewer than 10,000 defenders. The city wasn't counting on its soldiers. It was betting everything it had on its legendary and supposedly unbreakable walls. But Mehmed wasn't just bringing brute force. He was a strategic genius. He had the largest cannon the world had ever seen built, specifically to smash those walls. He built a fortress to blockade the entire strait, cutting off any chance of reinforcements. And then, in his most unbelievable move, he literally dragged his warships over a hill on land to get around the city's defensive harbor chain. I mean, can you imagine seeing that? And finally, after a brutal 53-day siege, the unthinkable happened. The Janissaries poured through a breach in the walls, and on May 29th, 1453, Constantinople, the city of dreams, the heart of the Byzantine Empire for a millennium, fell. This was an event that sent shockwaves across the entire world. Mehmed, who from then on would be known as the Conqueror, turned the city, which he renamed Istanbul, into the spectacular capital of a new superpower. So after all that, what's the big takeaway from this incredible 600-year story? You know, the story of the Ottomans is so much more than just dates and battles. It's this powerful lesson in vision and, maybe more importantly, in resilience. It shows us that a powerful purpose really can create order out of chaos, and that even from total collapse, from the absolute brink of extinction, a stunning comeback is always possible. Think about it. Osman started with just a simple vision for safety in a broken world. Mehmed II achieved a dream that everyone told him was impossible. Their story really leaves us with a question for ourselves. When you're faced with chaos, do you just see the ruins, or do you see the foundation for your own empire?